On today's podcast, we're going to address the 6 most important questions I've been asked on my social media that'll help you as you grow in your business. The last few weeks, we have been consistently interacting on social media and been asking for questions. I've done a new series called Carpool Questions where we have questions submitted, and I'm just getting overwhelmed with the questions that are on there. And they're such amazing questions. I'm going to take this podcast episode and I'm going to take the 6 most important ones that I've been asked and answer these questions specific to life, leadership, and business. And so as we take these questions, understand that this is kind of the medium by which we submit the questions. It's this interactive concept that's happening through social media. But also, I love the interaction of YouTube and this podcast and what we're doing specific to what you're doing. So if you're not following me on social media, go to Eddie Wilson Official and connect with me there, because I'll have a conversation with you there. It'll be a two-way conversation. You can ask your questions and we'll try to use these various mediums to answer them. The other side of this is I don't do a lot of personal mentorship. I get asked a lot to do personal mentorship, and I take maybe 5 or 6 a year, but I don't do a lot of personal mentorship. So what I do is I use this medium, this podcast, to mentor you. So if you wonder why I do a lot of monologue, it would be if I was sitting there with you across from my desk and I was explaining to you how to become a better leader, a better communicator, a better business entrepreneur, better at life, whatever it is, whatever I have learned in my life, this podcast is a way for me to essentially give that to you. And so I try to take the content from social media and talk about it based on the conversations I'm having. And I have a very specific path that I'm trying to always walk those that are leading others, whether it's in business or in life, down a path, an ascension path of consistently growing. So we do that each week on the podcast, and I appreciate all the feedback we get, and I appreciate you being a part of that. So with that being said, we have selected 6 great questions on life, business, and leadership to answer today that I think is, generally speaking, the questions that I want to answer on a consistent basis. So these all came through either Instagram or Facebook. And so I'm going to have Charlie kick us off today. Charlie, go ahead and start reading the questions, then I'll answer them.
First question, Eddie. Hey, Eddie, big fan. I'm 15 years old, and I'm wondering how I can start my entrepreneurship journey. Do you have any tips or advice for me?
And I love that because I get a lot of interaction from young people that are watching the content and wanting to elevate who they are in the business world. And so for a 15-year-old, and if you're listening today, to be listening to content like this, you're already well on your way. At 15, I was not listening to business content. I was listening to, I was in business, I was working, but I was working to earn $1. I wasn't thinking about what my dollar produced in life. So just the fact that you're thinking about entrepreneurship and growth, kudos to you. And for those parents out there that are stoking this in their children, what an awesome opportunity for them to grow and to build. I watched a couple of boys in the neighborhood the other day selling lemonade and cookies. And I think that's where so many people get their start, is just trying to find their way into commerce and providing value, whether they're mowing a lawn or they're providing a product and trying to understand it. I loved the boys on the side of the road the other day, though, because his sign, huge sign, he had a little pitcher of lemonade, a couple of cups on a table in the neighborhood, and huge sign. And the huge sign said, try me, pay me whatever you think it's worth, just try it. And it was like, wow, somebody, had been working with that kid on a marketing hook on that, because essentially what he's saying is like, give me a chance. And then how do you tell a 10 or a 12-year-old that your lemonade's horrible and I'm not paying you anything for it? It's not going to happen. I guarantee that kid made some money that day. And so I love it, though. At 15, the advice that I would give is that nothing comes quickly. And that all success comes on the other side of knowledge. I think what many people want is they want to have a shortcut to success. If I do this, then I get this. And unfortunately, this generation's being told a lie. And that is, if you grind for a little while and you build a TikTok channel or you build a YouTube channel or you go stream on Twitch or whatever it is, they hear about this one guy that did this one thing that now has this massive, now he's 16 years old and driving Lamborghinis, right? And while that has happened, it has happened to such a small, minute percentage of the population. The general population is going to have to get under some level of learning. They're going to have to gain knowledge. And then with that knowledge, they're either going to have to build services or products, right? Services or products that are going to be of value to the American population or the global population, where there's now an exchange for what it is that your value is providing. In the end, I would focus on two things at 15. Number one, what am I learning? What am I learning? And I would at 15 learn about the things you're passionate about. Don't just go randomly learn about things that you don't care about. When you're 15, it's hard enough to stay motivated. So learn about the things you're passionate about. My oldest son, Skylar, when he was, he wasn't really that into sports, and I probably burned him out as a child anyways. It's probably my fault. But in 6th grade, he began to start having a conversation with me about the things he loved and the things he enjoyed. And he loved creativity. We bought him a camera. He took a camera to every day of his school journey in 6th grade. We encouraged him, and I would spend time at nighttime helping him edit. And I had a video studio, so I'd put him randomly in there with guys. And Skylar built a YouTube channel called My Days in 6th grade, and he had a video go viral in his 6th grade year. He ripped off some Transformers things and somehow, figured out a way to get everybody to come watch it. He didn't monetize it because he used some information that wasn't necessarily his. But in the end, he saw a video go viral. It stoked something inside of him. He realized if I provide something, people will respond. Today he owns his own, he's 24 years old. He owns his own social media agency, does video production, does a bunch of editing, and helps country singers right now find their place in this world of social media. So he's taken what he learned and what he applied himself to, and then he produced something of value that then is exchanged for money, right? That's the traditional way this American system works. If you're a parent today, I would highly recommend you don't just give your children money. What I do is I put a list of things on the refrigerator that says, if you want to earn money, here's the exchange for the value you're going to provide. Sweep the garage, it's $10. Wash the car, that's $8, right? And I have a whole list. So when my children come to me and they ask for money, what I say is there's the way to earn it, right? Because that's the way the world system works. And oftentimes by just giving somebody something without a value exchange, you're teaching them the opposite of the world system. So what we live in a capitalistic society. The person who provides the best service or product wins, right? You can charge the most, you can have the longest business lifespan. And so I'm very much a proponent of Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours. It becomes 10,000 hours. You become an expert in 10,000 hours worth of work. So it's knowledge, right? And then it's value exchange. What can you do to exchange value? As a 15-year-old, you have the ability. We actually have inside of our membership a young man that's 18 years old. His mom bought him a membership to our mastermind. Think about this. This young 18-year-old, his name is Jackson, a young 18-year-old who now is in our community with a bunch of business owners who is essentially trying to exchange value and gain knowledge. Jackson just started his first business, and it's a vending machine business. And I'm watching it on our threads, and he's crushing it and doing fantastic. What he realized is this is what I can do to provide value that's going to, in exchange, give me the capital I want. Stop worrying about YouTube and TikTok and being TikTok famous and being an amazing streamer on Twitch. You can watch Kai Cenat all you want, but Kai, while he has experienced amazing growth, the likelihood of you being Kai is so small. But the likelihood of you going and building a $100 million business by providing value and becoming an expert is actually exponentially more than you becoming some virtual sensation on the internet. So I just want to put out some practical wisdom for you as a 15-year-old. Next question.
Beautiful. Number 2, your content brings so much value and empowerment. What inspires you the most when creating content and teaching after reaching the level of success you have?
Yeah, thank you to whoever asked that online for the kind words about the content. I do think that my content comes from a place of doing it. And I think there's a massive difference between coaches and gurus. Gurus oftentimes are teaching something that they don't actually do. A coach oftentimes is coming from a place of physically doing it. What you'll notice is that In the areas of where I have experienced success, I'll speak openly about it. But oftentimes, if you ask me a question that, especially online, something that I don't feel very qualified to answer, I'll avoid it. So I think that it has to be a mutual exchange. One motto that I wrote down when I was reading this question that I want to just hit on for a second is something that I wrote down a while ago, and it says, if it's not for us or not for me, then it's about us, or it's about me, right? So like, let me just put me in there. If it's not for me, then it's not, or then it is about me. Meaning, if I'm not willing to do the things that I teach, right, then it's more about me inflating my ego, and it's more about me. So if I won't physically go do the things I'm instructing you to do, then it's more about my ego. It's about me. It's not for me, right? So like, if what I'm saying is not for me, then it's about me, right? Does that make sense? And so I need to make sure that I'm removing my ego out of this and only speaking from a place of truth, right? Truth where I have some level of experience that I can speak from. You deserve, as a listener, for a speaker to be sowing into you specific to their skills and their experience. The internet is a really interesting place in that if you tell a great enough story, you don't actually have to have experience to back it up. You can go rent a Turo for an hour, go drive up and pay somebody to take a picture with their jet, and all of a sudden you are the summum bonum of all knowledge on whatever area that you are. I would highly, highly recommend for you to really gauge who you listen to. Your time is the most valuable asset you have. Why would you give it to someone of no value? Your time is the most valuable possession you have. Why would you give it to someone of no value? On the internet, there are millions of people with little value. And the reason I say that is because the things they're telling you, they're not actually doing. One of the big things that I have here inside of this office is what we call the war room. The war room is where I invite business owners to come sit in my business and actually watch how I do business. That way you can take me to task. You can say, well, on episode number 7, you said this. Are you physically doing it in the building? It holds me accountable to you. And one of the big things in building this organization just 2 years ago was I said to my business partner, I want to open this place up to be a place of learning. So when I'm physically doing what I'm buying a company, I want to show people how I bought it. When I'm selling a company, I want to show people how I've done it. I want to show, and many people that have gone through our war room experience can tell you, I'll show you the good and the bad. I'll show you the companies that aren't doing well, and I'll show you the companies that are scaling. Because in that process of experience, there's the greatest amount of learning. And so my content comes from a place of experience. And when you say you need help in some area, and I feel like I have some level of experience, I'm happy to share it. I want to be an altruist. I don't want to have some expectation on what I'm delivering. I want to deliver it because I believe that all, like the rising tides really does lift all ships.
Question number 3. Are people born leaders? Why or why not?
Yeah, I love that question. From the concept of leadership, and I get this all the time, and that's why I picked this question as one of the 6, was many times people believe that leaders are just born with an innate sense or ability to just step out in front and do it. While I believe that some of the characteristics of leadership are born, I believe that true leadership is actually trained. Now, there are 3 levels of leadership, which I'm going to leave that to the next question because there's another question on the different types of leadership. But when it comes to leadership, there's definitely levels of leadership. Leader of followers, leader of I would say leaders of oneself, leaders of followers, and leaders of leaders. That's kind of my 3 areas. And that I would say that the problem with most leaders is they haven't begun the first process of leading themselves. Here's why I say that I believe that it can be taught, is because I believe that inside of every human is the ability to create habitual reactions, right? Like if we will just do the same thing for a certain period of time, it becomes routine. I believe that a majority of leadership is just habitual actions, right? And I believe it's habitual actions tied to a higher level of character than the norm, right? So let's just say we have an even playing field, and this is the level of character that's the average of every human. In order to be a leader, think about it. A leader is just one who steps outside of the pack and essentially is one step ahead, right, while others are following. If this is the level of character in America today, on average, in order to be a leader, you just have to step to here, right? Like you just have to go up one level. The way to do that is to create new habitual norms in your life. So what is it that you could do to change your routine? I've said oftentimes that the average person wakes up at 7:30 in the morning in America. So if you want to be better, then wake up at 7:15, right? Can you do that habitually? The average person in America, and you just go through the averages, right? Can you be 5, 10% better? Pick the areas that you want to be 5% to 10% better, and you will already be so far above everyone around you that it actually naturally allows you have to lead yourself. It allows the followers to follow. Now, leaders of leaders is a totally different level, and we'll talk about that in a second. But in that, it's like for you, I believe that you have to look at what you've been given, right? Look at the average norms and create new habitual processes in your life. So it's raising the character level 10%. Right? So can you, if the average person in America works out, I think what it is, I saw somewhere it's like works out 21 times per year, right? So the average person in America doesn't even work out once a week, right? That's basically once every other week. And that's taking into consideration all the people that are doing 2 and 3 times a day, all the way down to the person who refuses to work out completely, right? So that means that if you just worked out once a week, you're actually better than the norm, right? If you worked out 2 times a week, you are far above the norm. If you read one book per year, the average American reads less than 1 book per year. That means that you've now raised the bar. Your character level has achieved. So what we have to see is that, being a leader is about stepping up just a slightly above the norm. And by the way, the bar is very, very low. What could you do to create new habitual habits in your life to actually position yourself for leadership?
Okay, question number 4. I feel like every time I do business, it doesn't go right for me. Yeah. How do you stay motivated after your failures?
Yeah, that's a great, great question. So many entrepreneurs struggle with failure because failure is the natural process of winning, right? You don't start off by winning. You start off by failing. And in failing, you learn to win. So one of my favorite books that I've ever read, and I've got a lot of them, but one of my favorite is the book Winning by Tim Grover, where he breaks down the process of winning. And Tim Grover was Michael Jordan's coach. He was Kobe Bryant's coach. He was Dwayne Wade's coach. Tim Grover is the coach of coaches, right? Tim Grover is an amazing human being. We've had him on the stage at Aspire, and I'm always amazed by his mindset. But in that process, what he talks about is getting the first win, right? You have to fail in order to a place where you win. Then you anchor all of your next steps into that win. So you have to think it's the process of changing your mindset. As you've failed and as you've lost, you have to get to a place, and I've often said, of gratitude for the things that you learned. And if you can find gratitude in the things you learned in the failure, it becomes a catalyst for your next success. Why do I say that? Well, I've told the story many times about the loss of my sister, and my mother would constantly rehearse, and I use the word rehearse, gratitude with me, because gratitude doesn't just come naturally. We won't just all of a sudden one day wake up and go, oh, I'm happy about these bad things that have happened to me. Rehearsing it is about doing it over and over again until it becomes natural, right? Like go rehearse to sing, go rehearse a foul shot, whatever it is. So rehearsing gratitude. My mother would, as I was struggling with the loss of my sister, would come in and say, tell me about your hardest day. Tell me about your favorite day. Tell me about your favorite toy that your sister had. Tell me. And she would contrast these things to the point where she would get me to a place where she would say, now, weren't you really happy that you had those times with Rebecca? Aren't you happy that you got to play with this toy with Rebecca? And she would get me to rehearse gratitude in my life. And she would often say, gratitude in the valley is the catalyst for growth, because in the valley you learn the greatest lessons, right? Like you learn way more lessons in the failure than you do in the successes. Learning what not to do is oftentimes way more important than learning what to do. And so you now learn in the failure. And in that, if you can find gratitude, my first business I ever sold, I left about $20 to $30 million on the table by some really strong Wall Street sharks, and they took advantage of me. In that process, I remember my mother's words as I was going through that process, and I started rehearsing gratitude. What is it that I'm learning that I could take with me to the next thing? That's why I'm the king of exits today, is because literally I found a place of not success, but failure, like failure in my own mind, and rehearsed gratitude in the failure, started thinking about all the things that I was learning, thinking about the things that I was actually gaining, and I was able to flip that completely around and create the new model, which you see today, almost 15 years later. So actually 17 years later. And so now for me, gratitude is a daily part of my activity. So you have to take the failures, the losses in life, and you have to begin to identify what it is that you are gaining out of it and find gratitude, no matter how painful the loss is. No matter what has happened to you in your life, this is a very, very difficult statement to make. And I want you to hear me, but hear me for the truth in it. The worst day of your entire life, the worst thing that's ever happened to you in your life, has elements of greatness inside of it. And if you could take away all the hurt, all the pain, all the frustration, and you could find those elements, they become a spark that you cannot deny, that lights inside of you, that takes you to success that nobody else can steal from you. So as you have failed in business, find gratitude in what you've learned. Turn that gratitude into a win. Then anchor all actions into that win.
Can I share a story on
Sure.
learning from failure?
Yeah.
I newly graduated from code school, so I'm a software developer.
Yeah.
I have a big boy job where I'm developing for a real company. I'm making a website. I code a website, and it breaks. Clock is ticking, revenue's being lost, and I am crawling through lines of code. And I finally find it after 12 straight hours of looking through thousands of lines of code. And it's a small syntax error. It was probably like a comma or this or that. But do you think I made that mistake again?
Never.
Heck no.
No, you never will.
Yeah, and that was like the starkest learning from failure was like, I will never, ever do that again.
Yeah.
And that was for me what cemented that.
Yeah, I brought my trusty Ohio State mug since we are the national champs this year. And to me, the loss this year against Michigan, which is the worst thing that happened to us all year, right? To lose to an unranked team, our biggest rival. I think I heard our quarterback, Will Howard, say he was grateful for the lessons he learned. I said to my son, I said, that's going to be the changing point. Because if you find gratitude, so he loses the worst game of his career and ends up a national champion. And it is, and you watched him with his time management, you watch him with his play calling, you watch him with all the things. All of us, we need the big losses in our life. You need the syntax error. You need these things because it sets a baseline now. Like I'm not doing that again, and it's helpful if we can find gratitude in that. Because now you can turn around and go, well, I'll never make that again. It's etched in who I am.
Yeah. But for this person, it's like find gratitude and don't quit. Like keep going.
Yeah, find gratitude and don't quit. And when you finally hit success, anchor your feelings into that, not all the losses that you've had. One thing that I don't do often is I at least identify my failures. I want to identify. I don't want to walk away and just avoid it. But my gratitude is not rehearsing the failure over and over again. It's the lesson in the failure that I'm rehearsing, right? So don't just go back and be like, I'm the guy that, my company went bankrupt. Like, no, you're the guy that the company went bankrupt. And in that, you learned whatever lesson that you're now taking to the next phase of life.
Question number 5. I want to work for you. How would someone go about joining your team?
Yeah. Most of what you see on social is my philosophy, and it's the positive side of who I am. You may not actually want to work for me. Understand that behind every person that is driven and you see the positive side, there's oftentimes a liability, right? And that liability for me is oftentimes I'm a little impetuous. I drive hard. I push bigger than most people. I'll take risks that most aren't willing to take. And so with every good comes bad, right? And so I know that it sounds fun. You see the Aspire Tour, you see my podcast, and you think, man, I'd love to work for that guy. There have been many people that have walked out that said, I don't know that was a great experience. And so me being super transparent with you is it's not about who I am and it's not about who you are. What is important is that you find a place where you are contributing at the highest level and finding places to grow. My organization, one of the things that I take very, very seriously is that I believe I'm a steward of the people. I take loss of people very hard. I don't like it. I don't like when we have to let someone go. I don't like, because to some degree, it almost feels like I let them down. I let our company down. I really, really struggle when I've had to let someone go because they just didn't meet a certain expectation or we've had to part ways. That's a very difficult thing. But you know, it's the natural process of business and life. And for you, as you are looking to find your place in this world, a place where you can contribute, find someone that you can not only contribute to or with, but that will also allow you the space to grow, to become more of who you are. Is that process happening? Because I would say that for all of the craziness that is Collective Influence, our private equity firm, in 2 years, we've grown crazy. It's been a wild ride. We're not stopping. There's change all the time. There's turmoil. It's wild. It's crazy. I will say that the one thing that I hope that my employees have found is that while everything is crazy and everything is sometimes, moving so fast, that my desire is for them to become the greatest person that they should be becoming, right? Like they should be elevating on that ladder. And I want all of my people to be growing. So if you're really interested in working for me, you can always hit up our HR department. You can talk to Jordan there. And we always have openings. And I'm always open to have people come work for us. As a matter of fact, we've had people that have come from our communities that now are employed by us. But I would make sure that you understand who you are and what you need in order to grow. Don't just look at somebody on social media or somebody with a social presence and be like, I need to go sit next to that guy. It's not always a positive experience. You have to understand their strengths also come with liabilities. Your strengths also come with liabilities, and you need to find the right fit for the advancement of who you are, not the advancement of who my company is or what I'm trying to advance, right? Like I'll have to make that determination, but find a place where you can advance who you are.
I love the transparency. I feel like a lot of people shy away from that, so that's awesome.
It's truth, right? I mean, the biggest truth is that with every strength, there is a corresponding liability.
100%.
Yeah.
All right, last question number 6.
Okay.
Thank you, Eddie. This is helpful. I am currently a leader leading followers. How do I become a leader leading leaders? And/or what is the difference between those two?
Yeah. So I alluded this to you in question number 2 or 3 there, and I talked about becoming a leader. And this person is specifically talking about maybe one of the podcasts that I've done in the past or was on a guest on someone else's show. And I say that there's 3 levels of leadership. There's one who can lead themselves. That's level 1. That's a leader of themselves. Number 2 is a leader of followers, and then a leader of leaders. There's 3 levels of leadership. You don't have the right to be a leader of leaders until you can choose or you can implement the ability to lead oneself. It goes back to, do you have a high enough level of character to lead yourself? Can you, and not all producers are leaders. Just because you can sell something, just because you can produce something does not mean that you have or possess the ability to lead. Leadership is about character. It's about habitual processes, right? Leading oneself is about what I said earlier, which is rising just slightly above the norm, right? Like the ability to actually step outside of the pack, right? That's to lead yourself, finding habitual processes in areas where you lack in order to grow. Leading followers is now the first level of responsibility, because majority of the world will not ever step up into a leadership role. If you look at it, that's why for every department leader, there's usually 6 or 8 people in the department doing the work, right? Like naturally, the majority of the world will not have to lead in a corporate setting. Now, all of us are called to lead to a degree. Lead your family, lead yourself, right? So on and so forth. But a leader of followers is somebody who stepped outside the pack, and a bunch of followers say, hey, guide us, take us where we should go, right? I would say that one of the greatest indicators of a leader of followers and a leader of leaders is a leader of followers can take somebody from point A to point B successfully. It's almost like a project manager. Can I successfully get job A to job B, right? Can I take this pile of dirt and move it over here to this pile of dirt, right? Like that's leading followers. It's about organization. It's about efficiency. It's like you have 20 people and you need to move this pile of dirt, 30 feet over here and create a new pile of dirt. So, a leader steps up and says, do we have the resources? Do we have the manpower? They're assessing the timing of doing it, and they begin to organize the work process, right? So I'm going to need, all of you to be shoveling. I'm going to need you to be holding the wheelbarrow. I'm going to, whatever it is, right? A leader of leaders is a different level. And this is what sets a leader of leaders apart and why other leaders ask to follow that leader. Is a leader of followers can take people from point A to point B. A leader of leaders takes people from point A to point B while making them better, right? Like while actually increasing who they are, while increasing their character, increasing their output, increasing their productivity, increasing their efficiency. A leader of leaders can do all of that simultaneously. So the reason that leaders of leaders are oftentimes elevated is because most leaders know that the most important thing that they do is elevate themselves. So when they see a leader of leaders, they go, oh, I could actually do my job, lead, and I could become better along the journey, right? And so I would ask you this, if a leader, let's take your leader, the people that are leading you today, I want you to ask yourself some questions. And that would be questions like this. Have they ever talked to me about areas that I can improve in? Have they ever exemplified or modeled out what those areas would look like if I improved in them? Number 3, have they ever pushed me beyond my capability, right? Have they ever, right? Like, have they ever concerned themselves in areas not just let's say professionally, but also personally? Have they ever had conversations about the things that hold me back? A leader of leaders is one that's going to consistently pull all areas of your life into the forefront. Now, they may not have time to sit down and talk about the family and the kids and all that type of stuff, but they're going to talk to you about your areas of improvement. They're going to help you develop. They're going to be putting plans in front of you for not just A to B, right, but A to B with improvement. And when other leaders see that, there's a natural progression towards desiring you to lead them. I would say there's a big change in that most people, this is what happens. Leaders of themselves typically realize like, oh, I'm outside the pack, I'm in front, right? So they will say things like, come on, let's go, follow me, right? However, a leader of leaders oftentimes never asks for people to follow them. They assume the reins once they're given. Does that make sense? Because what I know about the leader of leaders is they're not usually saying to other leaders, come on, guys, let's go. Come on, let's do this. What happens is oftentimes people around them that are leaders subject themselves to their authority. Would you help me? Would you consider? Would you mentor? Can you give me some feedback? Right? You know that you're moving into a leader of leaders if you look around you and the people that are asking you for feedback are actually leaders themselves. That's when you have found yourself in a position of a leader of leaders. I believe that a true leader of leaders has an air of humility. not an air of arrogance. Why? Because in humility is when someone gives you the reins. If you're just a demonstrative leader screaming at people, the followers will come. They'll show up. The followers will come. The lowest tier of people from a leadership perspective will show up. However, if all you do is scream and holler and yell, right? All you do is beat your chest. All you do is exert dominance. You're never going to be a leader of leaders. Think about the people who have led the greatest armies. They're not usually the ones that are the most demonstrative people beating their chest. They're the ones that actually understand what it takes to develop people. Are you developing people? If you're not developing people, you're not a leader of leaders. If you're developing yourself, you can become a leader of followers. If you're willing to develop others while holding a high level of integrity and character, you can become a leader of leaders.
And episode 12 is where you go over that. So if you want to dive a little deeper, go listen to episode 12.
For sure.
Those are all the questions.
Those are the questions. So I just want to take a few minutes today and answer those questions. I hope they were helpful. If you would like to interact with me, feel free to comment on any of the channels. We have a team that takes care of those. But I'm most active on social in that I respond to my own DMs. I'm very active in answering as many questions as I can. And if you have any other questions that it would be helpful to you in your journey, I would love to help mentor you through this medium to make sure that you have what you need and that you're growing. And I want to kind of end on this note. That concept of leader of leaders, there's another element that I want you to consider, because I think all of us should be trying to elevate to become a leader of leaders, not for the sake of pride or arrogance, but for the sake of developing humankind, right? Is that a leader of leaders will always take themselves out of the most beneficial position. They'll always elevate someone else. A leader of leaders will never hold the glory, will never hold the responsibility, will never pull everything to themselves. What they'll do is they'll realize that the world around them, as you elevate people, become this amazing place where we can all grow together. For me, it's impact others. It's what keeps me centered. It's what keeps me humble. Going to a mission field or to a place where there's a child that doesn't have food, and being able to help that child get to that next place in their life, which may just be nourishment, right? Provides me a level of understanding about myself and about the world around me. So a leader of leaders will also elevate others. And today, as you kind of walk into your day or you're ending your day, I want to encourage you to take that step in your life. Really measure yourself. All the questions I just answered would be so much better served. Go back through every single one of them. If you in your life would elevate to a level of character that's above the pack, they would choose to lead those that need led, and would elevate themselves to make sure that everyone else around them is succeeding at a greater level. Not because you're elevating yourself, but because you desire to elevate others. This world would be a pretty amazing place. And I want to encourage you to take those steps today. Thanks so much for being a part of the podcast and for listening today. I'd love to connect with you further, and you can connect with me on social media at Eddie Wilson Official on any of the social media channels.